Welcome to the wonderful world of wine, exploring all things wine with you. We are your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay, and every week we talk about trending topics in the wine world. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the wonderful world of wine. We're your hosts, Mark and Kim. Every week, we get together remotely still and talk about some of our favorite trending topics from the wine world, just to keep it fresh and keep it interesting. And how are you doing this week, Mark? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Kim. It's good to be here talking wine with you. I'm excited for today's topics and hear what you found so we can discuss with our listeners.
Absolutely. We always love to bring you those things that interest us in the wine world, and we welcome your comments and questions so that we can make it a little bit more, personal to you, but what you want to learn about is what we want to talk to you about.
So what's first today, Kim?
So our first article comes from a website that we love to explore called vinepair.com. And because we are getting into some warmer weather, we wanted to talk a little bit about a seasonal wine, sort of, rosé. We talk about rosé a lot, and we drink it all year long, but it is the kind of wine that people really do associate with warmer weather, sitting out on your back deck or your patio, having a nice refreshing glass of rosé. So we wanted to bring up what is trending and current, and maybe what people will be drinking this summer when it comes to their glass of pink wine.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, Kim. I was thinking around here, it's like a spring. The rosés, the new vintages of rosés hit the shelf. But I'm wondering in parts of the world or the country where it's just warm all year round, is it more popular year round than it is here?
Well, it does seem to be.
Here, like you said.
Yeah, in some of those places, especially where they produce a lot of rosé, that it's not a seasonal thing. In southern France, they drink it all the time. It's not like, hey, now it's May or June or July, let's break out the rosé. So at least I know for those production places. But I've never looked into places like, I don't know.
California, Florida, even in your own country, do they drink it more year round than other parts?
Yeah, where
I
it's
never
always
see any studies like that. So,
no.
But we talked many times in the past about rosé, how it's a year round. It goes with food year round, Thanksgiving foods. So this article, I believe it was the 10 most popular rosés. It must be in the world, correct? Because VinePair.
Yeah, styles. So wine, rosé styles, but also particular brands that are the tops when it comes to most popular. And over the last couple of weeks, we have done a couple of articles about popularity of wines, certain wine brands that are global and super popular all over the world, based not just on, how much is selling, but how are those brands perceived and, the knowledge level that consumers have about those. And it's a little bit different, I feel like, with rosé, because there's no, there are a couple of brands that are pretty well known, but it's more a category in and of itself. And I think what we're seeing now a little bit is this breakdown within the category of some different styles. So we see this a little bit with Chardonnay, where we've got, on one end of the spectrum, we have the buttery, toasty, creamy style of Chardonnay. And on the other side, we have this more vibrant, unoaked, lighter, crisper style. And I really think that we're starting to see that with styles of rosé as well.
So more away from the traditional dry rosés, you're saying? Or?
Well, more like that there are two camps, I guess. On one side, you've got the crisp, dry, really light, more traditional Provençal style of rosé. Whereas on the other side, you have this richer, fruitier, harkening back more to California style of rosé. And we see this a lot out of South America too. I know I have some favorites that are rosés that are made from the Malbec grape that are like really vibrant pink and dark and a little fruitier, not necessarily sweet, but are very, very different from those light salmon colored, almost white wines from those places in Provence.
Yeah, and there's two things you mentioned, Kim, I wanted to hit on with you was the brand thing. A lot of these, and when we get to them, I'll have you say them because they're all French mostly, so listeners won't be insulted by my pronunciation. But there were no real brands that stuck out. Like none of the big guys stood out to me. These seem like not small companies, but individual brands instead of corporations to
Mm-hmm.
me. And then the other thing you were talking about was when people, to me, when they buy a rosé or look at a rosé, it's not looking for a grape usually. It's like rosé, it says rosé, and they're looking by color maybe, but they're not really associating looking for a Montepulciano, looking for a Pinot Noir rosé or something like that. So
Yeah, I would
those are a
completely
couple of things
agree
I
with
wanted to
that.
ask you. And then when we're done, I want to ask you, like personally, what you look for in rosé. I know you started mentioning, but I had a couple of questions about that. So quickly also, Kim, I just wanted to say they did mention a stat that in 2016, 151 million bottle sales in rosé. And then so far this year, it's up to 576 million. So it's up 281%. So the rosé trend is still increasing every year, which we've been talking about for the longest amount of time. So it was highlighted in this article.
Yeah, 281% increase over in the last 4 years for rosé sales, which I think is absolutely incredible for just one particular style of wine. So pretty interesting.
It's great for wine geeks and wine lovers or rosé lovers because there's so many, like you said, different styles, different grapes, different regions hitting the market every year. And you have unlimited selection every year, it seems.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the cool thing about it too is that, yes, there are all of those interesting new ones for people who are wine geeks to explore. You've got different countries and different styles and yada yada. But it's also extremely approachable for the wine novice as well. If you've had a couple of different bottles of rosé, maybe you had a glass at a restaurant, maybe you went over a friend's house and you had a glass and you really liked it, there's so much out there that it's so easy to just put your hands on a bottle and have it just be completely enjoyable, even if you don't know the first thing about that bottle of wine. So that's one of the things that I really like about this style is that there's something for everybody and you don't have to know a whole lot about it. You don't need to know about wine blends. You don't need to necessarily know about wine regions. And sometimes the color doesn't even really matter. Some of those dark ones might have a lighter, more floral, fruity flavor, and some of the lighter ones might pack more of a savory, earthy punch. So there's something out there for everyone. If you know that you've had a couple of rosés and you've liked them, then it's very, very easy, I feel, to experiment and just pick up a bottle off the shelf and be like, all right, let me try this one, because chances are you'll probably like it.
So how do you want to handle the list that they came up with, Kim? Do you want to go through each one? Do you want to just talk about highlights?
I didn't write them down. I just wrote down notes. So I didn't make a list of what the wines were.
Okay. Well,
so I could look them up and then have them on my screen.
I think what I was thinking is more like, let's just, tell the listeners here what of the 10, maybe where they're from, what the grapes were, and price range type of thing, so they can kind of get an idea of what's popular.
Yeah, I think we should be specific. I don't have it written down on my sheet, but I can. Do you want me to look it up? Because I can just have it.
No. I mean, I think there's some brands people probably recognize, but there are others that are not very popular. I mean, Mateus was on there from Portugal, and that was the least expensive rosé on the list. And I think not too long ago, I tried the Mateus line, which has been around for years.
Oh gosh, forever.
And it still tastes really good. And
I bet I would like it because it's a little sweet, right?
Yeah, a little. I mean, it's not bone dry, but it's not sweet either. So, but I mean, it always had that interesting bottle.
Yeah, the kind of fatter bottle.
So that was the least expensive. So to give our listeners an idea, the list of the 10 most popular, it was a $6 range up to $108 a bottle. Now, I don't know about you, Kim, but I don't see any popularity in rosés above, say, $30. Never mind $108 a bottle.
I personally have never seen a bottle of rosé over $100, unless it's rosé champagne, which is a different animal all in and of itself. But I would say probably the most expensive one I've seen maybe was $50.
Now, it was a Spanish rosé from Rioja, and it was a Reserva. So, I mean, it has some aging on it, which is interesting. But 108, I don't think I've had a Reserva level aged wine. I mean, it may be 2 years old. Rosé, we did a whole segment in the past on 1-2-year-old vintage rosé. Sometimes still tastes very fresh.
Sure.
But I thought that was interesting at $108 a bottle.
So this Spanish one, this was the Lopez Heredia.
Correct.
So that is a wine house that is known for its more traditional styles of Rioja, and they really pride themselves on aging their wines at the winery and then not releasing them until they feel that they are at the perfect point of drinking. They hold back their white wines for like 12 years. So their style, they've got a very, very specific viewpoint when it comes to what a wine should taste like. And their viewpoint is that aged wine is the way to go. So I'm absolutely not surprised that they are doing this with their rosé in addition to their whites and their reds. And I don't think they make a lot of wine either, and they're considered one of the top producers in Spain. So they probably feel like they only make a limited amount of the rosé, and it probably sells out every year, so they can command that kind of price.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, to Google it, to see the color, what color this is when
I'm
it
willing
comes
to
out.
hazard a guess that it's brownish.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, a shade that if you put it up against all the other rosés, people would be probably freaked out about it.
Probably. So that's our most expensive rosé on the list. Our least expensive rosé on the list was $6, you said?
Yep, Matousse was the least expensive. And then there was probably one on this list that everybody's heard of, and that's Whispering Angel.
Mm-hmm.
And every year it seems to be one of the most popular rosés people tend to go for from Provence. Any thoughts with Whispering Angel?
So I think that this is a prime example of really, really good marketing when it comes to wine. Because if you think about it, a lot of the way that we, especially as Americans, buy wine is we buy based on the grape variety. And rosé has really broken that mold for us. You know, the what the grape is in the bottle matters so much less than what people are looking for as far as flavor and honestly branding. I feel like with a brand like Whispering Angel, they have really done such a good job marketing to the public that people recognize the brand over anything else, and they associate it with good quality. They associate it with a crisp, light, refreshing style of rosé, and they've done a fantastic job getting in front of the market and really running away with, I think, the American audience when it comes to this lighter style of rosé.
Yeah, and they keep increasing production every year and maintaining the same, usually $20 range for a price point. So, I mean, good job for them.
Is this the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie one?
That one is, I believe that is not theirs. Theirs is Miraval, no?
Miraval is it?
Yeah, Chateau okay. Miraval is Brad Pitt and what's his wife's name?
Excellent.
Angelina Jolie. Yeah. And I don't know, when they separated, there was some talk they got rid of that vineyard, but I don't know, but that's still also in the same price point as Whispering Angel, which is probably a marketing thing on their part to make it similar price point. So that was on the list. And
they are similar wines. They are very similar style, you know, side by side. They would taste very similar. Yep.
Similar grape. You're listening to The Wonderful World of Wine, and we are your hosts, Mark Lindsay and Kim Simone, exploring all things wine with you. If you'd like to get more information about Kim, please go to her website at vinitaswineworks.com. If you'd like to get more information about myself, please go to franklinliquors.com. If you'd like to ask us a question or follow us on Facebook, you can find us at The Wonderful World of Wine. So today we're talking about rosés, and there was an article in Vine Pair for 10 most popular rosés, and we're kind of hitting rosé topics and talking about a few individual things on the list. We talked the list price of these is $6 up to $108. And Kim, one of the things I noticed that 7 of the 10 on the list are French. We talked about Matousse from Portugal. I believe there's an Italian on here. What were the other ones? There's one other country then. If there's 7 out of 10,
Spain,
we had
for the Lopez Heredia.
Oh yeah, Spain. Yeah,
yep,
the high end one. So 7 out of 10 French. And do you think that is typical of the rosé world when you're looking at it? That
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep,
70%
I totally
of the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, this is really the homeland of this style of wine. They've literally been making rosé in southern France since the Romans were there. So it's like 2,500 years ago they were making rosé. So this part of the world is where we really see the beginnings of this style. And of course it is spreading to other places. But if we look at how long rosé has been popular in America, this has really only been a trending thing for the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, a little bit longer for people who follow these sorts of things. And of course, we had our White Zinfandel boom in the 1980s. But this is different. This is that dry style. If you close your eyes, sometimes you can convince yourself that you're drinking a white wine. And they've been consuming these wines in France for a very, very long time. And it's not a new thing over there. It's relatively new for us here, but we're still seeing that the most popular brands and quantity of these wines is coming from southern France. That's not to say that there aren't excellent ones from other parts of the world and that they haven't been making rosé wine in other places, but France is really where we're still seeing a lot of the originals and still a lot of the production.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the Brad Pitt celebrity rosé. What's your thoughts on celebrities marketing rosé or wines in general? Because I don't know if you saw, there's a new rosé coming out with Post Malone is releasing one this summer. But he's partnered with, I think it's Gallo.
Okay.
But it's going to be a French rosé in that $20 price point, celebrity backed, but also big corporation backed. So right. Any thoughts on?
I mean, this is not particular to rosé. There are a lot of wine brands out there that have either, singers or sports stars or other famous people associated with it. I mean, it's not just wine, it's liquor too. We certainly see that branding and advertising from lots and lots of famous people. So I don't think that this is a new thing. It's not necessarily that these people are wine experts and are tasting samples and are deciding, making the big decisions as far as what the wine tastes like, but it's lending their names and their celebrity and probably some of their dollars to a brand. And it's a marketing twist, I would say, but not unusual when you look at the grand scheme of marketing. Famous people sell all sorts of stuff, and it's not just unique to our industry.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting how people follow either a show or a celebrity, and then whatever they put out, they have to get it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. They might not be rosé drinkers, but then now they're going to try this rosé because of who's behind it. And it all kind of leads up to, initially I wanted to ask you, Kim, when you're a wine shopper, not a wine like buying for the restaurant, but you're a shopper. You go on, you're looking at the shelves, and what attracts you to a rosé? Is it the color? Is it the grape? Is it the price point? What's the first thing? Because I always find it interesting when I see people, they'll ask, you have rosé, and what they make a selection by, and it seems to me it's more price point than region or grape.
And I think that is, typical for a lot of people, but maybe, obviously the first thing that they've done as a shopper is they've decided upon a category. So just like someone would come in and say, I'm looking for a Chardonnay, they're saying, I'm looking for a rosé. So Chardonnay is a category. Sparkling wine is a category. Rosé is a category. So that is already their first determinant factor. They haven't just come in and say, oh, I want a bottle of wine, and then you lead them to the rosé section, and they're like, oh, maybe a rosé is a good idea. They've already decided that they're looking for rosé. So I think it's interesting that it's not broken down by grape, like you said. Rosé has become kind of its own thing, and grape variety really doesn't matter as much. I'm curious when I go into a wine shop and there are single varietal rosés, I might be like, oh, I like that grape variety. Maybe I'll try that in a rosé. But I think you're probably right that most people, once they've determined what category they're looking for, then they'll go by price. And I guess I kind of do the same thing too, because I have a general price point that I like to stick to, and I'm fairly comfortable getting a rosé anywhere within that price point. So whether it's like, oh, I'm going to try this $9 rosé, or hey, maybe I'll splurge for the $19.99 bottle of rosé. So I think price is still very important for people. But,
yeah, you sound like me when you're looking, you have a rosé in mind, you have a price range in mind, and then, hey, this is this is Montepulciano rosé, 100% Montepulciano. I've never had that. I'll try that, mm-hmm. Right? It's like, I don't look at the color, but as a retailer, I like to have a range of locations, a range of grapes, a range of colors, yep. in a price point, but I don't go above, say, $30 because I just don't feel that category is popular in the rosé world.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like rosé hasn't quite busted through that fine wine ceiling yet. You know, people wouldn't blink an eye at a $50 bottle of Cabernet on the shelf, but a $50 bottle of Rosé, be like, what in the world is that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that is because when you think of rosé, it's like, I'm not putting this down. I have to drink it right away. So I'm not drinking a $50 bottle tonight. You know, I'm looking for a rosé.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
I think that
buy
might
this.
be part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's also this sort of social, cultural feeling about rosé that it is a little less serious. It's something to crack open on a nice warm evening, or, you know, it's a Saturday afternoon and you're relaxing with your girlfriends and, you know, you want to have something bright and refreshing and delicious. So,
Yeah, just
you know, a
something
lot of
easy
rosé
drinking.
doesn't have that seriousness. And I feel like seriousness with wine translates into higher price tag with wine.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
rosé, I don't think that it has really busted through with the seriousness yet.
And like you're saying, a casual, just easy drinking thing. I've never really, I'm trying to think back, but I don't think I've ever had a customer come in and say, I'm having this dish, I'm looking for a rosé to go with it. It's more like, I just want a rosé. I want, you know, I'm sitting on the deck, I'm sitting by the pool. I want a nice rosé, something to quench my thirst, not as a food pairing item. So you think, does that hurt the rosé reputation because it's not considered a food pairing
Although
wine?
it is such a fantastic wine with food. Like, there are so many wonderful dishes that rosé is really, really good with. I can think of like 3 right off the top of my head.
See,
Shrimp scampi and rosé, people. Do shrimp scampi. Go into Mark's store and say, I'm making shrimp scampi for dinner.
Scampi.
I need a nice bottle of rosé.
So
Awesome.
what's so good about that pairing, Kim?
The garlic and rosé are amazing together, but it has to be a light, crisp style of rosé, so that more Provençal style. So think like Southern French, fish soup, vegetables, garlic, shrimp. Anything pink goes with pink. So I like rosé with shrimp, and I like rosé with salmon.
That's a good tip. What about this, Kim? When people are shopping for rosé, most of the time, I think what's happening now, and I'm seeing, is the white zin, the sweet moscatos, the pink moscatos. People are associating there's a little sweetness to rosé. So I kind of scare people, I think, when they say, I'm looking for a rosé. I say, well, these are all dry. These are sweet. And then when I say sweet, I'm pointing them into the white zin, white merlot, white, moscatos, the pink moscatos. Do you think it's a misunderstanding on wine consumers that they should be dry?
I think that this is a hurdle that we are slowly but surely getting over. And I think that restaurants have actually done quite a good job of getting their customers comfortable with the idea that rosé, it can be and often is a dry style of wine. I know that we do that in our restaurants, and when we eliminated White Zinfandel from all of the wine lists a couple of years ago, it was a big transition for a lot of consumers, because a lot of people associate the color pink with some sweetness in the wine.
Yeah.
And this is something that is, probably honestly going to take a generation to get over, because a lot of people who came of age when White Zinfandel was big. So if you turned 20 in 1980 and you have been drinking wine since then, and your first exposure to pink wine was that it was sweet, you're probably going to always carry a little bit of that in the back of your mind. So it is taking us some time as wine educators and as wine professionals and people who work in this every day to educate the public that pink wine doesn't necessarily have to be sweet. And I think it's just a gut reaction on the part of a lot of people that they see that color and they automatically associate it with something fruity and light and sugary. So this is, it's a slow process, but as I think younger wine drinkers come of age and come into learning about wine, they don't have that already in the back of their head. So it's one of these things that we're working on, and I feel like it's better. Like, I know a lot more people when I talk to them are less concerned that it's going to be sweet, but I still see that with people who are, I'd say, just over the age of 35. Everybody, is a little bit concerned that the rosé is going to be a little bit sweet.
What's your recommendation when a customer comes in the restaurant? You don't have white zin on the list, but they want something pink that has some sweetness to it?
Honestly, we don't really have anything.
Nothing
that's
at all.
pink
There's
and sweet.
no.
No. So I coach our employees that I have them talk a little bit about fruity versus sugary, and we try not to say sweet because that can be a little scary for people, unless they bring it up first. And if a guest says, oh, I'm looking for a sweet wine, and we don't have white Zinfandel, and they're used to that, there are alternatives. There's lovely Vouvrays. We've got some great Rieslings. So there are alternatives out there that I think really fit the flavor profile that people are looking for if they're white Zinfandel drinkers.
Would you lean them towards a sangria type, fruity,
yeah,
maybe
totally.
A little sweetness? Yeah,
yep.
That's kind of where I go with it.
Mm-hmm.
If they're they hear dry, and I kind of turn them either towards something. I'll ask them, do you want more fruit? Instead of saying sweetness, like you said, because a lot of people perceive that fruit as a sweeter.
And sangria
wine.
can be fun too because you can change up the recipes, and we change our cocktails a couple times a year, and there's always like a seasonal sangria, which is like super fun because then it's like, oh, this is more of like a winter sangria, and this is more of a spring sangria. So I personally love sangria because you could mix and match, and you can change things up, and there's always delicious things.
I wish people would use rosés more in a sangria, traditional rosé in a sangria. I always like watermelon flavor fruits in rosé, and no one really pushes it. I don't feel. I did hear of a restaurant one time that had got a great deal on some rosé, and they were making a special rosé sangria, because they had so much of it, but very rare to hear it that way.
I would totally do that.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, Kim, was about rosé as far as brand. Have you noticed there's been, say, ciders market? They're saying rosé cider. They're saying rosé seltzers. There's rosé gin. There's rosé vodka.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think all of this is marketing? They know the rosé trend is up, so they're just attaching.
I do. Yeah. Absolutely.
Relate it to the seltzer thing going on now. Everything's a seltzer. Everything's rosé this. Mm-hmm. But do you think that's hurting those Provence rosés or the rosé market, or it's bringing more attention?
No, I don't think it's hurting it. But I don't necessarily know that marketing a polar seltzer as rosé something is necessarily working. I think that there's so much. I feel like rosé cider didn't really go anywhere. I think it's a clever addition to these companies' portfolios, but I don't know how much of their sales are being driven by the fact that it's rosé and people are like, oh, I like rosé. I mean, maybe a fair bit. I mean, it is trendy, and there are people who absolutely love the style, so that then want to try it. But I definitely don't think it's hurting traditional wine.
I think a lot of it
to have all these other things named after rosé.
A lot of it to me is making people relate to more sweet. When I wish when they think rosé, they think dry. Because it's traditional. But I think when you're talking cider, you're talking gin, you're talking vodka, you're thinking flavorings, and the color. I'm looking at, I'm thinking sweetness. I'm not thinking dry. So
the fruitiness and the color and all that.
You been drinking any rosés this spring, summer?
What have we been drinking?
Any favorite regions you go to for rosé?
So like I said before, I like Argentina. I like rosés made from Malbec.
Malbec rosé?
Yeah. Believe it or not, there are some dry rosé Zinfandels from California. So not like the white Zinfandel style, but like a true dry rosé style from California, made from the Zinfandel grape. Pedroncelli makes a really nice one. And they're a little darker in color, but bone dry and has lots of like berry fruit flavor, which I personally really, really love. So I look out for those. I actually like Italian ones too. So Sangiovese based ones I really like. And then I'm quite partial to really anything from the Loire Valley in France. So if I see a Loire rosé, I will scoop that up, and it might be Pinot Noir, and it might be Cabernet Franc, but I'm particularly fond of that area of the world. So I try a bunch of different things.
Yeah, we like similar things. I tend to go with the little darker style rosés just because I feel it will always have a little darker fruit instead of those light red fruits. Or like the Provence to me is very, very light berry. Strawberry, raspberry, where like a Montepulciano or like you said, a Malbec is more of a darker red berry.
And see, I would prefer those for sipping on their own, those darker ones with a little bit more oomph. But if I'm going to pair it with, like I said, that shrimp scampi, I am absolutely going to something from Provence. That light, bright, higher acid, really crisp, refreshing, great with food. cuts through the olive oil, cuts through the butter, cuts through the garlic. It's just wonderful. So I think a good tip for our listeners, if they're listening to this and they're like, yeah, that dry style sounds really good. I'm always afraid when I pick up a bottle of pink wine that it's going to be sweet. If you want to make sure that you're not getting any sweetness whatsoever in your rosé, the best thing to start with is something from southern France. So get a bottle of wine that says Provence or Aix-en-Provence, anything that says Provence on it. You can be guaranteed that there isn't any sugar in that wine. So it's a great place to start on your rosé journey.
Great advice. Now I don't know if I'm hungry or thirsty.
I'm hungry and thirsty.
Yeah, both.
Thank you for listening to The Wonderful World of Wine. We have been your hosts, Kim Simone and Mark Lindsay. You can find us on Facebook at The Wonderful World of Wine, and we always welcome your questions and your comments. And for back episodes, you can find us on SoundCloud and iTunes. Cheers.